The AJAZZ AJ199 received a almost cult-like following with the recent uprising of Chinese mice, and this right here is the 4K polling version. It features a Pixar 3395 sensor together with the Nordic MCU and comes with the 4K polling dongle in the package. With 4K polling you get around minus 0.2 milliseconds motion delay, which is on a similar level than VAX's NP0S at 1K polling, and is slightly worse than Pulsar's and Lamsu's implementations at 4K. With 2K polling the motion delay is around minus 0.1 milliseconds, and at 1K it's between plus 0.5 milliseconds and 1 milliseconds more than my control unit. So the performance is not as good as other 4K polling implementations, and the gain from 2K Hz is nothing to write home about, so it's up to you if you want to sacrifice the battery life for that extra 0.1 milliseconds better motion delay. Thankfully, motion sync doesn't seem to affect the results, however, so you might as well use it on this mouse. There seems to be some sort of polling instability issues also with this mouse on all polling rates, and severe instability starts to happen towards the end of the test runs. For comparison, this is the Pulsar X2H at 4K right after the test of this AJAZZ 199 4K, and there's no similar issues. Can you feel these instabilities in games, however? Probably not. The switches the AJAZZ uses here are the Huano transparent blue shell pink dots, and they feel pretty okay. They are pretty light switch and are quite spammable, but the implementation here has a bit too much post travel for my liking. Also, there is sometimes this audible squeaking sound on the right main button, which is probably the plunger grinding on some of the plastic inside. It is nothing major, but a bit irritating when it happens. I don't have much to say about the side buttons. They work and are not super mushy, so that's good. Scroll wheel is also a pretty standard TTC Gold implementation. It has some tactility, but it's not super hard to scroll. The shape of the AJAZZ 199 has been described as a smaller GPX because they honestly look very similar, but measurements wise the mouse is very much the copy of a Viper Mini. Based on the measurements I took with my trusty calipers, the mouse is almost the same width from the center and the back as the Viper Mini Signature Edition, and about 1 millimeter thinner on the front. The height of the mouse is also about a half a millimeter higher than the Viper Mini Signature Edition, and the hump is just tiny bit more rounded than on the Viper Mini, so it feels just slightly more feeling on your palm. The length is also basically the same. Only the front of the mouse is copied from the design philosophy of the GPX, and the upper right corner is rounded, so it provides a good comfortable position if you tend to hook it with your ring finger. So yeah, this is basically a mix of the Viper Mini and the GPX shape-wise. The mouse weighed 67 grams because for some reason they wanted to put a 900 mAh battery inside the mouse. The battery alone weighs around 15 grams, which in my opinion is a bit overkill. It's like making a super lightweight sports car that could go really fast but attaching a fuel tank behind it. The weight is not super massive, to be honest, and the weight balancing is good, but for a mouse this small I would prefer the weight to be like 10 grams lighter. That could be achieved easily with a smaller battery, but sadly not a single one of my extra batteries had the same size connector, and I didn't want to start soldering. But yeah, I'd like to see the battery switch to something around 500 mAh, which would be enough for 4K polling purposes, and that would bring the weight down a notch. There was also quite an interesting skate choice on my unit, and they had installed the front skate twice on it. I was having some weird lift off issues and I checked the bottom and there it was. So if you have this mouse, maybe check your skates, and honestly you should just change the skates to something better, since like all the other cheaper mice, the skates are just pretty bad. I right here have the obsidian dots, which are always a good option. The mouse is mostly very well built and it doesn't have a bunch of creaking, but there is this annoying part just below the side buttons where I place my thumb that flexes inwards. In a week of usage it has become a bit worse, so I imagine the issue will worsen with time. So some sidewall reinforcement should be made for future patches or models. The plastic itself is the same as on the VGN Dragonfly, for example, so depending on your skin type it might feel a bit slippery. For me, I don't have issues with it, but yeah, you might have to install grips. Also, the dongle is the most cheaply made dongle I have ever seen, and my unit had its bottom plate popped out straight out of the box, so I had to pop it right in. It is also very easy to open because it has a screw hole on the bottom, so those who have a 3D printer at home could easily make a sleeker design for the shell at home. So in conclusion, the AJAZZ 199 4K is an okay-ish budget mouse, but just don't expect anything extraordinary out of it in terms of build quality and performance. But it's a good option if you want to have a similar shape than the Viper Mini, and this is in my opinion the closest one of all the budget mice recently. And if you end up getting this mouse, one thing I recommend you to do is to swap out the skates, or just check the bottom if there's two skates on top of each other. I just realized that I didn't even mention the scroll wheel RGB, but I would love to see them to ditch out the remaining RGB for good and then swap out the battery to something lighter for like 500 milliampere hours battery. It would suffice, and then yeah, add some sidewall support for the mouse. But that's about it. Thanks for watching and see you on the next one. Goodbye.